Hi there, everybody. This is me, Pat Windrow, at the Cable Easel with another program which is devoted to painting and drawing from life. Most of the time I do landscapes, and in order to do that and not take a whole crew outside and have to fight the elements, we do it with the camcorder. And so we bring it back in here and we project it onto the monitor here in the studio, and I work from that. It's the closest that you can get to being out of doors, and it's actually quite comfortable, and the technique is available to just about everybody. They can, a lot of people have camcorders, and they go out and pick a scene and let it run for a good 30 minutes and come back and project it, and there you have it. That's what we do here at the studio. And so this one is a scene that I have done before, but it's from a whole different angle. It's from much farther away, and it's a building called the Gamecock. Since I did it the last few times, it has been renovated at a great cost with privately raised funds, and it is now a very sweet-looking, sort of pastel-toned, Easter egg-colored little historic building at the end of Trustees Road in Stony Brook, or Setauket. Those two villages coincide very often. And here is the view looking east onto the Gamecock. And as you can see, the colors are absolutely, well, they're almost fanciful at this point. They are the original colors, a red roof and a green siding, but in this wintertime, the colors are actually far more intriguing than they are usually when they're surrounded with a lot of very brilliant greens of summertime. Now the colors are able to be seen to tremendous advantage because the rest of the colors are very subdued. Naturally, being the wintertime, there's snow on the ground, and that means snow on the beach, which is also another wonderful color combination. So let's call this one a color study, even though it's a familiar building. So beginning, as I usually do from scratch, I'm working on a white canvas. The canvas is a sort of large for a 1-hour program, and so, well, half hour is what we're going to do the first part, and then the second part will be done later. And so the first part is going to be the layout and a lot of the painting of it. But let me show you how I start from scratch. The first thing you do, because we live on this planet where there are horizons, is find the horizon. The horizon in this one is approximately a little bit higher up than halfway. That's a nice idea. I call this a ribbon composition. There are 3 planes of color. There are the sky, there's the middle ground, and there's the foreground, and they are bands of color. The band of color that we call sky, and that's because we live on this planet. I'm using something that I call dirty turpentine. It is turpentine just dipped in some ivory black, and here's the layout. The sky is approximately a little bit higher than middle of the canvas. This represents the sky. That's already a composition. We know that we live here. This could be the landmass, and this is the sky. That's a 1-line composition. So we're now going to go on to the second line, which is not going to make that much difference, but I'm going to show you how compositions are built, because composition sometimes is very intimidating to people who are beginning to paint. They say, I don't know anything about composition. So I'm telling you about composition. All right. For the first thing we see here is 3 stripes. Stretching the imagination, you can say that this is the horizon with the sky above, and this is going to denote something that is happening in the middle ground. As it is, it's the beach, and the placement of the house on the beach is going to tell you that if you look at it very closely, the line of the roof intersects the background, the horizon line just a little bit. And it's a sort of a frontal view, which makes it extremely simple to draw. Anybody who tries to do this will be able to draw these. These are rectangles. There's a slight angle to this roof, which is because the roof does in fact fan out, as most roofs do. But there you have 3 lines, 1, 2, and 3, this rectangle. I'm now going to build it, and I'm going down to the beach line, which is where this house is sitting. This house sits on the beach. The observation is that the lower part of this house is taller than the roof line, and so there's this other rectangle. These are the simple compositions which I think everybody ought to be able to understand and try. The little rectangles that come in here are the placement of the little windows, and there are 2 more rectangles just below it, but they have a little roof on top of them. So we've got rectangles, straight lines and rectangles. That could be okay, but it needs to be relieved with some curves or some diagonals or something which is away from the stark straight line. That means that the building of this mass of trees is the only time that I'm going to start to now introduce curves. These are wonderful, typical Long Island beach cedars. They are evergreens, and they are very peculiar to this particular part of the world, and they are very typical. And when you see these beach cedars, you'll know that you are somewhere on the eastern coast of the United States, and to be more specific, that you are actually on Long Island. There are cedars just about on both coastlines of Long Island, and this is the land mass of that. So we have the 2 very interesting items here: the great mass of trees and the charming turn of the century, maybe earlier than turn of the century building, which is a landmark now. And the details will come later as it gets painted. They're a little what used to be for wind vanes, and then there's the center one. Dead center of the building is a little cupola, which is probably today just more decorative. When it was first put up, there was a reason for it. There was a little ladder inside in which you could go up and you could observe what was happening out at sea. This little house was built for by a man called Shipman, for his sons, who were scull racers. They raced those wonderful long boats up and down Long Island Sound and in the creeks and so on, and he built this to house the boats of his racing sons. Here is the introduction now of some more depth. In the distance here, there is a sort of a misty-looking tree back here. Is probably another one of those cedars. It's off into the distance, and now things are beginning to fill up, and the composition is becoming more complicated. But if I don't do this composition, it is not going to be the right kind of demonstration. I don't believe that one should ever just do something and expect people to understand it. I have to explain how you compose. Here is the beach has been snowed on, which makes it a wonderful, brilliant contrast. And now here is the snow part of the beach, and it rises just a little bit for another band, another introduction of a horizontal line. That is where the snow has hit the beach, and then the wonderful sort of lying in wait marsh grasses that are near the shore. They are in their winter colors at this point, which is sort of yellow ochre and burnt sienna and wonderful tones like that. And then we have the front foreground of the dark and agitated Long Island Sound water, which has just crept into the harbor. So here we have the general layout of this what I call color masses. The need to understand that the masses are the composition. I'm going to take out this horizon line just so that you can see. That should not confuse people, but if I'm being specific and trying to be extra clear about what I'm doing, I ought to be able to make it really clear. The background is a landmass called Crane's Neck, and it looks like a mountain at this point. Well, it's a rather high place, and it is just at the breaking line of the roof because we were so far away. So I think that I want to lower it just a little bit so that you can get the contrast of the roof against the sky. I'm only swiping 1/4 of an inch, but it's all in the realm of composition and creation. One is allowed to do that, especially if the picture is going to benefit by it. I'm going to use this rather stiff brush. I'm going to use some quick drying. Grumbacher puts out a wonderful product called quick drying white. It's known as MG, and it's very thick. As you can see, it's almost like, well, it's almost like spackle. It's so heavy. Spackle is even less dense than this, and I'm going to mix it right on the canvas because this is the opportunity to tell you that you can mix on the canvas instead of having to carry a tremendous amount of equipment with you as you go out. You can carry the minimum, and you can just something to mix your color on, and you can mix your color on the canvas. The trouble is that when you get down to the bottom, you're going to have to scrape a lot of it off. When this shot was taken, the sky was colorless, almost colorless, and so with the minimum of, I've used cerulean blue and ultramarine blue, with a minimum of color to tint that great glob of white that I squeezed out onto the canvas. You can see that this is going to give it a nice. Well, it's called impasto. It's the texture of oil painting, and when it's very thick, it's really quite intriguing. It also tells you something about the quality of the oil, and it gets you as far away from watercolor technique as possible. Oils ought to be used very generously. That requires having to buy and use a large quantity. However, if you work on small paintings, the amount of color that you need to apply is less, obviously. So the cost is minimal compared to what you're going to find out about it. I'm sure that a carton of cigarettes costs as much, well, probably more. I don't smoke, so I don't know what the cost of a carton of cigarettes is, but I'll bet you that I can buy 3 tubes of this white paint for the cost of a carton of cigarettes. So in my opinion, though, that value is obvious. So when you're talking or thinking about the cost of buying colors, well, it's up to you to juggle that decision and that problem. However, as you can see, the colorless, well, it looks very blue on the monitor. Actually, it's almost not blue at all, but having a touch of blue in it is okay. It's going to make for a very intriguing color scheme because, as I said earlier, the colors on the building are what made me really want to pick this scene, although I have done this house before in the summertime at a different angle with different light on it, but I've always done it, and before the renovation I contributed a painting of this building to the committee that was raising funds for the renovation, and the painting that I gave them sold, and I gave that money to the I forget whom they were called. I think it was Friends of the Gamecock or something, which is the name of the building, or it was through the Stony Brook Community Fund. They needed to restore the building before it would fall down or be taken away in a high wind, and so there is the restored building. After all of that chatter, I've managed to block in the sky, which is just about all that one needs to do. This is going to be called an extremely simple color painting and layout. I think that doing complicated things on these shows is detrimental. It's counterproductive. There's too much going on, and people are finding themselves a little perplexed by what I'm doing. So I'm going to keep it all quite simple. I'm now going to mix up the color of the background, which has a wonderful, nice sort of a mauve quality to it, because it is the winter time, and the winter time tends to rob objects far away of their color. They become sort of indistinct. This is more blue than it is mauve, but it's also tempered with a touch of ochre, and it's darker than what you would think because of the atmosphere in the wintertime. So I'm putting it on with, well, sort of, as you can see, dabbing and deliberate strokes, but I'm using it quite thick. And I think that when you get close-ups of it, you'll agree that the thickness is really a nice quality to try to get into these oil paintings. Okay, the other side has to yet be done, and the balcony that is on this little building, restored with great care, because it's a very elaborate little Victorian balcony with some cute little fences and so on them. I'm going to superimpose over this background. Well, Now, what could be simpler? One color, two colors. I'm filling in as I go along. I'm going to take a very short break now so that I can wipe all this heavy paint off because I'm going to get into other colors, but don't go too far away. I'll be right back. Here we are again, and not too much time lost, I think, and I'm going to proceed right into and continue with the background. The background being the farthest point away. We started with the sky, we got onto the landmass of Crane's Neck, and I'm going to play with these, not play, but I'm going to seriously try to attend to these misty looking trees back here. I'm going to use some squeezed out of the tube it's called yellow green, and it's mixed with a little bit of umber. Let me see if that's, yeah, that's just about, dark enough because they're sort of way off in the distance and they're not really too distinct, and you can work right over the background. And then there's another one beyond that. So all of these colors are to be extremely carefully tried to balance them because focus of color is as important as the object itself. And if you can possibly understand that the value of the color is what's going to give it distance. If it's too dark, then I have nowhere to go with the ones that are in the foreground. So to have a balance of color is a good one, even though it's difficult to fool with in the beginning, but it's something that is very important. I've got some color on my brush. I'm mixing it up with some of that background color, giving it a feeling that there is vegetation back there, but I don't want to have anything specific because there is too many specific things going on in the foreground. And besides that, one must remain with a little bit of mystery as you do this kind of thing. When the viewer sees it, they know that something is going on back there, but they're not quite sure. So that's what it means that you leave something to the imagination. There was a little building on this creek which burned last winter, I think it was, or fall. It was behind this building, and I've done that one a number of times too, and that was rather sad to see that go. Here's that wonderful pink roof, and I'm using some alizarin crimson and some white, and I don't know whether or not my monitor tells me that that's really pretty brilliant. Pretty brilliant. I think that's probably, if I need to tone it down later, I will. But this is the color, and mixing it on the canvas is a nice idea because then I can see exactly whether or not it is the right value to go with the rest of it. I'm using a fake paintbrush. These are these bristles that are not sable. They are made of nylon, and when you're using this heavy type of impasto paint, their resistance is very important. They do not collapse under the weight of this heavy paint. So if you're going to get this MG quick drying white that Grumbacher puts out, be sure that you get some of these stiff fake, I hate to say fake, imitation replacement type of bristles. Well, there is, I think maybe I should make that just a little bit longer. I have a feeling that I have cheated on the length of this building. So it's all right. It's okay to do these mistakes so that you can see how to correct them. There is a need to let people understand that when you do something, you have it in your power to correct it. A lot of people panic if they make a mistake and they say it's wrong, but you can in fact correct it. Here is I'm lengthening it on both sides. It's therefore at the same time when I have done this, I have to certainly widen the lower part of the building as well. So the lower part of the building is calling. I'm going to wipe this rosy tone off my brush, and I'm going to redirect the side of the building. Here it is. Let me redirect it. I'm making it wider. As you can see, I'm doing it with some black paint, and I'm going to be, let me see, that is still sort of in the center. But the green of the building is probably one of the more distinctive things about it. It needs a little bit of toning down because the green that I have here is much too Easter egg color-like. So I'm going to tone it down with some burnt sienna. As you can see, my palette is just another piece of canvas, a canvas board, and it's very convenient because it doesn't cost very much. And if I mess it up too badly, I can toss it away and start with another one. Where when you go and spend a lot, oh, that's not the right color, is it? I need some yellow in there. It's got to be a little bit brighter than that. When you spend a lot of money on a mahogany palette and you don't keep it clean, you're going to be in trouble. It's going to give you many headaches because you have to start scraping away at it, and the next thing you know, the mahogany chips, and you've spent $60 on a mahogany palette. And what for? When you can use a canvas board and toss it away if something happens. Let me see, that black has gotten in the way there. Let me use the trusty finger here to get rid of the guideline black. And then the wonderful thing about working in oils is that you can make errors and go over it. So anybody who says that they're a little frightened of working in oils, they must experiment with it and see how satisfying it is to be able to go ahead, make a mistake, and correct it without too many problems. Let me see. Yeah, I've got to relocate these windows somewhat. And the green is I believe there's a nice darkness underneath that roof line because there is shadow. The sun did come out long enough to cast a shadow from that overhang. The roof is it overhangs quite much. It's a nice wide overhang, which is typical of the turn-of-the-century buildings. Today the overhangs are very rare, and it's a pity because I think overhanging roof lines are very attractive. So here is me. Here is my the application of this wonderful sort of a deep, very rich bluish green, and I'm just going to add a touch of violet and some more ultramarine and see if I can cast that shadow underneath the roof. A little bit darker than that, I think. We have to make this very dramatic, and the shadow under the roof will tell you that, in fact, there is a lot of light overhead, but that the building has a nice wide overhang. So there we have pretty much a kind of a very clear story of what this building is all about. I'm going to put a little bit of darkness in there for the windows because they're going to get a little white outline. The fancy little Victorian gingerbread on the roof line is going to be done a little bit later as the program progresses and the paint dries a little bit. I shall put the white little fancy woodwork around that after the paint has dried somewhat. That's a technique that one has to learn to do. Now, as long as I've got my brush full of this nice, rich, dark color, I'm going to begin to dab in these cedars that I told you are typical of the area. They cannot be just sort of faked. You have to try to really be a faithful reporter on the character of these trees, because they do have an anatomy all their own, and they also have a distinction all their own. So when you're out doing this, or when you observe it, try to remember that not just any old tree will do. There are some programs whereby the demonstration of trees is that you kind of hit the canvas with a bunch of green and you say, oh, that's not too bad, that looks like a tree. Well, I'm interested in making it look like the exact tree, not just like any tree, because I am something of a reporter. I want this to be absolutely recognizable as the place that it is. And certainly if I'm not going to pay attention to the way the trees grow, it's not going to be a faithful rendering. I'm using also something called sec, which is French for dry. The French for dry is sec, and they have simply put a Z in front of it. And that is that's the translucent product that goes with this quick drying white, and it's to make the darker colors dry quickly also, because the white has already got the drying element in it, but the darker colors do not. So one must combine this zec with the darker tones, such as the ones that I'm doing now. As you can see, there is a sort of a cedary, prickly look about the trees when I do it this way. And it takes a little time. You can't just go ahead and say, well, I'm going to do these as fast as possible. They should be very carefully, not carefully, but they should be observed and then rendered with deliberate understanding to make them look about the kind of trees that they are, after all. So as I was out there shooting this scene, the wind was whipping about in the harbor, and even though the monitor is showing you that the surface of the water is very agitated, everything else is quite simple. Those cedar trees are not moving in the wind. They do not, if they bend, then you know you have a hurricane. Those cedar trees are extremely sturdy. And this cluster has been there, to the best of my knowledge, ever since I got here, and that's a very long time ago. They've gotten visibly taller and more lush and thicker, but this clump of trees has been there and has gone through, well, to my knowledge, has gone through at least 4 major hurricanes without ever being damaged. They lose a little branch here and there, but this cluster of trees here out there at the end of Trustees Road is as much of a landmark as the building is. I would not be surprised if those trees were in fact rooted, smaller of course, at the time that this Gamecock building was built, which was back in the late 1800s. There is a historic documentation of this house. I do not have it memorized, but I do know that it was before the turn of the century. Well, naturally, as things always happen, the time flies, and you get done not as much as you'd like to. However, this being part 1 of this study, and I think I'm going to sort of identify this as called a winter beach scene, even though it is a portrait of the Gamecock in the wintertime. I'll finish it at another time, and so that means that I hope that when you see this one, that it will be followed reasonably soon with the next one. So, as I say, the simpler the composition for the beginner or even for the experienced painter is the best way. I try to remain as simple as possible. It's taken me all this time to realize that bigger is not better and more complicated is not better. Simpler is better. Reduce it down to the nice, understandable levels of the viewer that's going to see and or live with this picture. So, with all of this incessant chattering, hopefully you got some interesting thoughts from me, and that you can be interested enough to tune in the next time when this particular composition will be finished. Thanks again for watching. This is Pat Windrow at the Cable Easel. And keep your brushes clean. That's the secret. Bye-bye.